Hey guys, what's up? It's Pretty Poor Gamer here, and I'm gonna do something slightly different today, but please don't click away because this is actually quite good. Well, I hope it's quite good anyway. I'm gonna do a conspiracy theory, and I have spent literally 10 minutes researching this conspiracy theory, but I promise you it's really good. And my conspiracy theory is why Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10, 10-2, and 13 are all connected. Now, the reason why I'm leaving out 11 is because it's an MMORPG and the lore is already really deep. And why I'm leaving out Final Fantasy 12 because it definitely has its own lore with Ivalice. It's got many spin-off games that are actually connected to it, and even Vagrant's story is connected to Final Fantasy 12. So, the order of the games which I think are connected, it goes Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 10, Final Fantasy X-2 obviously, Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8, and then Final Fantasy 13. I am Pretty Poor Gamer, and let's get into this with cold hard evidence on why all these games are connected. Okay, right, the first one is Final Fantasy 9 connecting to Final Fantasy 10. Now, I've made Final Fantasy 9 the origin point for all of the Final Fantasy games in this list. So, let's begin. First of all, please put your imagination caps on because some of these theories are a bit wild and crazy.
Imagination.
First of all, we have Treno in Final Fantasy 9, aka the city that never sleeps. As you can see in the imagery, it's a very well-off town with auction houses and card games and whatnot, and there's very wealthy people and very poor people as well. It's not unconceivable that it might become the superpower later on in the Final Fantasy 9 series, becoming one of the wealthiest cities, if not the wealthiest city of them all. Now, Treno is called the city that never sleeps. Zanarkand is a city that never sleeps. The lights are always on. In fact, Treno's theme song is The City That Never Sleeps. It's a beautiful theme song, by the way. Other similarities I've noticed is when you go into Zanarkand, there is a mountainous region. There's mountains all around you. When you go to Treno, look what's around the corner. Mountains. So, again, like I say, you need your imagination caps on for this, but it's very foreseeable that Treno could actually be Zanarkand from the past. My next point is very wild as well. Queen Bran, I think her name's Bran, so apologies for not saying this properly. So Bran looks a lot like Cindy. Yes, I know, an Aeon Cindy. I'm being very crazy here, but please bear with me. So there's Brahe, there's Cindy. Wow, they look very similar. That's right. So it's possible when Bran died, she became an Aeon. Alexandria might have placed her in a burial place, which over time, built up all this energy for her to become an Aeon. Where did she bury her? Or where did they bury her, sorry? Well, I can foresee her being buried in Ipsen Castle. Now, you say Cindy, yeah, it looks like Cindy, but there's also two. Why is it so inconceivable that Bran doesn't have any relatives? She's a royal. Royals have a lot of relatives, so both her sisters, possibly, if she had any, could have been buried in Ipsen Castle. Now, you find the Mega Sisters in Reman Temple, something like that. Sorry, again, pronunciations are a bit off here. If you look at Ipsen Castle, which I'll show an image of, and Reman Castle, which I'll show an image of, they're actually very similar. Again, possible over time that these people became worshipped. They were royal people, many people came to see them. Terrain changes, they build up, they make it more secure. There is very similar kind of themes going on with how those castles are built. So that's the only connections I have with Final Fantasy 9 to Final Fantasy 10, but I feel they are quite similar enough. So that's Final Fantasy 9 to 10 connected. Next we'll move on to Final Fantasy X-2 connected to Final Fantasy 7. It's a very obvious one, but nonetheless we should explain it. Hey guys, also a quick little update. Daguerreo in Final Fantasy 9 has kind of similarities to Bevelle in Final Fantasy X. Daguerreo was a place for refugee, had huge libraries. Sorry, the camera's jiggling, I'm literally holding it up right now. So it's not inconceivable, but many people came as a refugee. They brought their religion with them, and it just built up and built up. And if you notice in the imagery, when you first see Daguerreo, water's falling down the cliff. In one of the pictures in Final Fantasy X, there's water falling down one of the buildings in Bevelle. Now, it's clearly a long stretch, but just worth a note that very possible that Daguerreo and Bevelle could be connected in some way, shape, or form. It's now time to connect Final Fantasy X and X-2 with Final Fantasy VII. Everyone knows the interview and the Shinra conversation with Yuna, so this is going to be a very short bit, but for those who don't know, in Final Fantasy X-2, when you're speaking to Shinra, there's a little bit of back and forth, and I'm just going to read it here, so I'm going to face that way because my screen is there, so I will put the actual transcript up on the screen as well. So, Shinra says, "Aha." Yuna replies with, "What are you looking at?" Shinra replies, "Farplane data." Shinra again, "The more I study it, the more I find it fascinating. There's limitless energy swirling around in there." Yuna, "Limitless energy?" Shinra, "The life force that flows through our planet, I think." Shinra, "With a little work, we could probably extract the energy in a usable form." Brother says, "Sweet." Shinra, "Of course, that'd take generations." Brother says that's not fair, but he says, "Well, still it's something worth shooting for." Yuna says, "I think how much Spear would change if we ever got it to work. Maybe one day we could build a city full of light, one that never sleeps." AKA Zanarkand, AKA Treno. So, it is definitely not unconceivable, and there's even been hinted at there was a connection, that Shinra does aim for this. He makes his own company, and generations to come they find the planet, and then they travel to it, then with a lot of other people from Spira, probably mostly Al Bhed. They land there, and then they start the Shinra Electric Company, there to start over anew and make life much better. But as time goes on, the Shinra Electric Company becomes more twisted, life becomes worse, and people are then living in slums. I just think it's very similar. And now, let's think about Midgar. Midgar is where the Shinra Electric Company is, and we're going to connect 7 and 8. So, there's a map of Midgar right now, and now we'll get into why 7 and 8 are now connected. Okay, now for the big one. Connecting Final Fantasy VII to Final Fantasy VIII. Now, please, this is just for fun, so put some imagination caps on, okay?
Imagination.
Right, here we go. Bear with me, I'm going to show pictures for illustrations as well. So, Midgar in Final Fantasy VII is the powerhouse of Final Fantasy VII. What if they keep innovating, building, creating new things, making everything slicker, better transport? It's not very far off to the world of Asher in Final Fantasy VIII. And if you look at the maps, bing, you'll see they're very similar. Okay, so, very similar, but the lands are different. Here's where we put even more imagination. What if there's a huge natural disaster in Final Fantasy VII? Is it inconceivable that the land would change? No, Asher would still survive. They're a very futuristic place. They're clearly on a higher land now. Costa del Sol in Final Fantasy VII, which you can see on the map here. Bing! It's a huge tourist destination in Final Fantasy VII. Again, I'm going to use the word, it's not inconceivable that this tourist destination gets even more popular. You would need trains coming in, bus routes and everything. So you can have a bridge from Asher, formerly known as Midgar, all the way to Costa del Sol. Now, during this crisis, where it flooded, Costa del Sol gets completely submerged underwater. And that's where Fisherman Horizon comes in. Now, I'm going to read a quote about Fisherman's Horizon. "It was built by dissatisfied engineers who were active during the Asher, formerly known as Midgar's rapid development. They decided to abandon their homeland and build a new city. What better place to get away than the middle of the ocean? It was built on an old railway station used to cross the sea." Again, since Costa del Sol was a huge tourist destination, is it inconceivable that they had a railroad station? No, and let's look at the map here. Costa del Sol is pretty much bang in the middle of the map. Fisherman's Horizon, pretty much bang in the middle of the map. Costa del Sol could have had an old railway station just slightly further to the right. Boom, that's Fisherman's Horizon right there. So that's one big connection I feel I found. Midgar is Escher, and Costa del Sol is now Fisherman's Horizon. I've got one more final connection to do. So it's the northern crater in Final Fantasy VII. There's a lot of Mako flowing through it, and as we all know, Mako is bad on a person. This is not a subliminal advertising. Mako is very bad. Do not touch it. So what about the people of Jingle Village? They might have had an overdose of radiation, and they could have turned into the Shumi people. Shumi? It doesn't matter. You know what I'm talking about. The Shumi people in Final Fantasy VIII. Consumed by this transformation, they set up the Shumai village, which is correct right where the northern crater is, as you can see on the map. Bing and Bing, they are pretty much spot on with each other. And another thing, craters make holes in the ground, and the Shumai village live 323 meters underground. So due to this natural disaster, Final Fantasy VII has now become Final Fantasy VIII with their world and their lore. And that's how they are connected. So now to connect Final Fantasy VIII with Final Fantasy XIII. So we're going to establish one thing first. Cocoon is the moon from Final Fantasy VIII. Okay, I've just established that. That makes sense to me. And you'll understand why later on. So I don't have much to go on for this, but if you've got any theories, please put them in, and I'll probably do an updated video. So a place called Erebba in Final Fantasy XIII on Grand Pulse is what got my brain ticking over to how they're connected. So my theory is, what if there was a drought so bad that the riverbeds completely dried up, causing mass panic from everyone? Because you gotta remember, Fisherman's Horizon was completely surrounded by water, so if the riverbeds dried up, just the actual water just disappeared, it would cause hysteria, leaving people to want to escape. Where's the best place to escape when such a natural disaster is going to occur? Why, the moon. They already had a space station up there, so again, not inconceivable that the moon has a space station and space base on it, which they are already cultivating green life and whatnot. In Erebba, you can see a picture here. You can see the trademark sand and steps that go towards the beach on Costa del Sol. So clearly the river's dried up, and they do look very, very similar. And also in the picture you can see the railroad tracks and a broken windmill. Again, trademark symbols of Final Fantasy VIII's Fisherman's Horizon. So that indicated there was a huge drought which brought the water level right down to the bare minimum. And brought Costa del Sol back, and we've already established that Costa del Sol and Fisherman Horizons are connected, so that means Erebba must be connected too. Again, imagination hats.
Imagination.
So are there any other similarities? I've got one more. Tajin Tower has vague similarities to the Lunar Gate in Final Fantasy VIII. Both point towards the moon, aka Cocoon. While they look very different, as you can see in the two contrasting pictures, they might have been built around launching rockets to the moon and hopefully do it more efficiently. In Final Fantasy XIII's Wikipedia, Tajin Tower has very unknown properties. No one knows why it was built. So my theory is they built it around the Lunar Gate. More stability, more research involved. And that's the only connections I've really got now for Final Fantasy XIII, but like I say, if there's any more connections, please drop me a message, put it in the comments, and I might do an updated video. As always, please like and subscribe for more Pretty Poor Gamer. I really enjoyed doing this theory, strangely enough. I hope you did like it too, and I'll see you guys in the next video.